Almost unfair. Here is something that most people will never tell you out loud. A mature woman does not fall in love with words. She has heard every compliment. She has read every sweet text. She has sat through every candle-lit dinner where a man tried too hard to say the right thing. Words stopped impressing her a long time ago. What actually moves her? What actually cracks open that guarded heart she has spent years protecting is something far more primal: touch. But not just any touch. Not the clumsy grabby I saw this in a movie kind of touch. I am talking about specific, intentional, psychologically powerful touches that communicate things words literally cannot say. Safety, confidence, tenderness, desire, all without opening your mouth. Hello, I'm Mary Smith, host of the Mindful Senior Living YouTube channel, and today we're talking about something that is rarely discussed with honesty, especially when it comes to mature relationships. Because when people talk about attraction, they usually talk about charm, money, looks, or clever conversation. But what they almost never talk about is the quiet language of presence. Now, if you're watching this right now, I want you to pause for just a moment and think about the relationships you've seen in your life. Not the ones in movies, but the real ones. The couples who have stayed together for years. Have you ever noticed that those couples often communicate without speaking much at all? A glance, a small gesture, a simple touch on the arm. Something subtle passes between them that others can feel but cannot explain. If you have ever wondered why some men seem to effortlessly create emotional closeness while others try every trick in the book and still hear the words, "You're a great friend," then this conversation is going to open your eyes. Because many women over 40, 50, and beyond will tell you the same thing. Attraction at this stage of life feels very different than it did in your 20s. It's deeper, it's quieter, and strangely enough, it's often triggered by things that look incredibly small. Let me share something fascinating with you. Dr. Dashiell Keltner, a psychologist at UC Berkeley, conducted a study that sounds almost unbelievable at first. In this experiment, strangers were asked to communicate emotions using only touch on the forearm. The result shocked researchers. Participants were able to correctly identify emotions like gratitude, sympathy, compassion, and even love with accuracy rates of up to 78%. 78%. Think about that for a moment. Most people struggle to communicate clearly, even with full conversations, and yet a simple touch on the arm allowed strangers to understand each other's emotions almost perfectly. Human beings are wired to read emotional meaning. And this becomes even more powerful with mature women. By the time a woman reaches her 40s or 50s, she has heard every romantic line imaginable. She has experienced charming men, disappointing men, exciting men, confusing men. Words alone rarely convince her. Her brain is no longer asking, "What is he saying?" Her brain is asking something much deeper. Do I feel safe with him? Do I feel seen? Do I feel calm when he's near me? And this is where intentional, respectful touch becomes meaningful. Everything we're discussing today is about respectful, appropriate connection where trust already exists. These gestures are not shortcuts. They're expressions of presence, awareness, and emotional intelligence. When they happen naturally, they create closeness. Two of the touches on this list are so simple, many people overlook them. Let's begin with the first touch that quietly shifts how a woman feels about a man. It's something I like to call the slow lower back guide. When a man gently places his hand on the small of a woman's back while guiding her, something powerful occurs inside the nervous system. The lower back is one of the most nerve-sensitive areas of the human body. But the key word here is gentle. It says, "I'm paying attention to you." Often women carry responsibilities for so long they forget what it feels like to be supported. So when a man calmly places his hand there in a way that feels protective, her nervous system reads it as safety. Her body relaxes. I once read a story shared by a woman in her late 40s that perfectly illustrates this. She went on a casual dinner date with a man she wasn't sure about. As they walked into a crowded restaurant, he gently placed his hand on her lower back and guided her through the doorway. And she said something surprising happened. For a brief moment, she felt chosen, not rushed, not pushed, just acknowledged and protected in a very simple way. That tiny moment shifted how she saw him for the rest of the evening. If this idea is resonating with you, I'd love for you to share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced a moment where a simple gesture meant more than words? These are the quiet signals that build real emotional connection. And the second touch we're about to talk about might be even more powerful. It's something almost everyone does, but very few people do it in the way that actually creates emotional closeness. This one is called the two-handed handhold. The psychology behind it is far more fascinating than most people realize. But before we go deeper into that, take a moment to reflect on something. When was the last time someone held your hand and you truly felt like they were completely present with you? Not distracted, not multitasking, not half there. This is what we'll explore in the next segment. Just fully with you. Because that is exactly what this next gesture communicates in a way words simply cannot. And when a mature woman feels that kind of presence, something inside her begins to open again. But the reason why might surprise you, and we're about to talk about it next. The second touch is the two-handed handhold, and at first glance, this one might seem almost too simple to matter. After all, people hold hands all the time. Teenagers hold hands walking through the mall, couples hold hands on evening walks. It's one of the most common gestures of affection in the world. But what we're talking about here is something subtly different. This is the moment when you take her hand in yours, and then your other hand gently comes over the top, cradling it. Both of your hands surrounding one of hers. Maybe it happens while she's telling you a story. Maybe it happens when she shares something personal. Maybe it's during a quiet moment when the conversation slows and the world around you fades a little. Suddenly the connection feels different. And the reason has everything to do with how the brain interprets attention. Psychologists refer to something called bilateral stimulation. It's a concept used in therapeutic techniques like EMDR, which helps people process emotional memories. When both sides of the body receive symmetrical sensory input, the brain often interprets it as grounding, stabilizing, and calming. Now imagine what happens when both of your hands are gently holding hers. Her brain receives a very clear signal. I have your full attention. I'm here with you. Not halfway, not distracted, not looking over her shoulder to see who else just walked into the room, fully present. And for a mature woman, that experience can be incredibly powerful. Because here's something many women quietly admit later in life. They've spent years in relationships where their partner was physically present but emotionally somewhere else. Sitting at dinner while scrolling through their phone. Nodding during conversations while thinking about work, offering half-listened responses that make a woman feel like her words are simply background noise. So when a man holds her hand with both of his and looks directly at her while she speaks, something unexpected happens inside her mind. Contrast. Suddenly, she realizes, this feels different. And human psychology is deeply sensitive to contrast. If someone has experienced years of emotional distance, even a small moment of genuine presence can feel extraordinarily meaningful. That's why something as simple as this two-handed handhold can feel so intimate. It's not just about the physical contact, it's about what the gesture communicates emotionally. I'm here, fully. And when a mature woman experiences that kind of attention, it can shift how she perceives the man in front of her in a very real way. Now, let me ask you something that might be worth thinking about. How often in modern life do we truly give someone our undivided attention? Not often. We live in a world of constant notifications, endless distractions, and conversations that are interrupted every few seconds. Which means that when someone suddenly offers focused, grounded presence, it stands out. It feels rare. And rarity often creates emotional significance. If you're enjoying this conversation so far, take a moment to let me know by tapping the like button. It really helps the channel reach more people who are interested in understanding relationships in a deeper, healthier way. And if these conversations resonate with you, subscribing to Mindful Senior Living ensures you don't miss future discussions like this one. Now let's move to the third touch, because this one catches many women completely off guard. It's something so simple that most people underestimate it. The forehead touch. And no, I don't mean a forehead kiss. That's a different gesture entirely. What I'm talking about is the quiet moment when two people gently lean their foreheads together. No rush, no dramatic movement, just a soft connection where both foreheads meet and rest together for a moment. Eyes often close naturally, breathing slows, the world seems to pause for just a second. And what's fascinating is that this gesture carries enormous emotional weight. Dr. Sue Johnson, one of the most respected relationship researchers in the world and the creator of emotionally focused therapy, has spent decades studying what she calls bonding moments. These are tiny interactions between two people that activate the attachment system in the brain. Attachment isn't just something that happens between parents and children. Adults experience it too. When we feel emotionally safe with someone, our brain activates the same bonding mechanisms that create deep trust and closeness. The forehead touch is one of those powerful bonding gestures. And the reason is surprisingly simple. It requires vulnerability from both people. You can't press your forehead against someone's from across the room. You have to step closer. You have to slow down. You have to allow yourself to enter someone's personal space without rushing past it. For a mature woman who has spent years building emotional boundaries to protect herself from disappointment, that moment of closeness can feel incredibly meaningful. It doesn't demand anything. It doesn't escalate into something else. It simply says, right now, in this moment, I'm here with you. And there's another interesting layer to this gesture. It requires comfort with silence. Many people feel nervous when a moment becomes quiet. They rush to fill the silence with jokes, comments, or small talk. But when two people rest their foreheads together and simply breathe for a moment, they are communicating something deeper: comfort, trust, presence. A man who can stay in that moment without immediately pulling away or trying to turn it into something else demonstrates a level of emotional confidence that many women notice immediately. And emotional confidence is incredibly attractive because it signals maturity. Now, let me ask you something that might spark a little curiosity. Have you ever experienced a quiet moment with someone where you suddenly felt deeply connected, even though almost nothing was said? Those are bonding moments, and they are far more powerful than most people realize. Now, the fourth touch we're going to talk about is one I hesitated to include for a very simple reason. It's extremely effective. Almost unfairly effective when done naturally, but it also requires sensitivity and good timing. This one is the back of the neck touch. The nape of the neck is one of the most sensitive areas on the human body. It contains a dense concentration of nerve endings and is closely connected to areas of the brain responsible for both emotional response and physical awareness. Because it's also an area people cannot easily see or protect, the brain automatically evaluates any contact there very quickly. Is this safe? Do I trust this person? Does this feel comforting or intrusive? If the brain answers yes to the first two questions, something fascinating happens. A combination of dopamine and oxytocin begins to release. That combination is extremely powerful because dopamine is associated with attraction and pleasure, while oxytocin is associated with trust and bonding. When those two chemicals activate together, the brain begins to form stronger emotional associations with the person creating that experience. But here's where maturity becomes important. A younger person might not consciously register the significance of this gesture, but a mature woman often does, because she's had enough life experience to recognize the difference between confidence and aggression. When a man gently places his hand on the back of her neck in the right moment, perhaps while leaning in to share something quietly or while sitting close together, it communicates several things simultaneously: confidence, familiarity, desire, but without desperation, and that combination can feel surprisingly magnetic. However, timing matters enormously here. This is not a gesture for strangers. It's not something that should happen early before trust exists. This touch works precisely because it happens later, when comfort and familiarity have already been established. A mature woman recognizes that progression immediately, and when it happens naturally, the emotional impact can be powerful. Now, the next touch we're going to talk about might be the most subtle of all. In fact, many people do it without realizing they're doing it. Yet neuroscientists have discovered that it activates one of the brain's most fascinating systems for emotional bonding. It's called the thumb stroke. And when you understand the psychology behind it, you might start noticing it everywhere. But the real reason this gesture works so well is something most people have never heard of before. And once you understand it, you'll never look at a simple handhold the same way again. The fifth touch is the one I mentioned earlier, the one that almost feels unfair once you understand the psychology behind it. It's called the thumb stroke, and the reason it's so powerful is that it works quietly, almost invisibly, while something much deeper is happening inside the brain. Picture this moment for a second. You're sitting beside someone. Maybe you're already holding her hand. Maybe your hand is resting gently on her arm or her knee during a conversation. Nothing dramatic is happening. You're just talking, sharing thoughts, maybe even laughing about something ordinary. And without making a show of it, your thumb slowly moves across her skin. Back and forth, a small, soft, rhythmic movement. You don't announce it. You don't draw attention to it. In fact, many people who do this naturally aren't even aware that they're doing it. But her nervous system notices, her brain notices. And this is where the science becomes fascinating. Inside the human body, there is a special type of nerve fiber called C-tactile afferents. These nerve fibers are designed specifically to respond to slow, gentle stroking touch. They are not activated by quick taps or firm pressure. They respond to softness, warmth, slow rhythm. When these nerves are stimulated, they send signals directly to a region of the brain called the insular cortex. This area is deeply involved in emotional awareness and feelings of closeness between people. In simple terms, slow, gentle stroking touch activates the part of the brain that processes intimacy. Researchers studying social touch have found that this type of contact can significantly increase feelings of trust, emotional warmth, and attachment. And here's the interesting part. Because the movement is so subtle, the conscious mind might barely notice it. But the emotional brain absolutely does. So a mature woman might find herself feeling unusually relaxed sitting beside a man who is gently holding her hand while his thumb moves slowly across her skin. She might not even think about the movement consciously, but internally, her nervous system is experiencing something calming and reassuring. And when that feeling repeats itself over time, the brain begins to associate that calm emotional state with the person creating it. This is one of the quiet ways emotional bonds form between adults. Not through grand speeches, not through dramatic gestures, but through repeated small experiences where someone's presence simply feels good. I once read a story shared by a woman in her early 50s that illustrates this beautifully. She described sitting beside a man she had been seeing for only a short time. They were watching a movie. Nothing particularly romantic was happening, but he was holding her hand, and his thumb moved slowly across the back of her hand while they talked. Later, she wrote something that stuck with me. She said, "I realized halfway through the movie that I felt calmer than I had felt in years, and I couldn't even explain why." That is the power of subtle emotional signals. They bypass analysis and go straight to feeling. And mature women are often especially sensitive to these signals because life experience has trained them to pay attention to how people make them feel, not just what they say. Now, before we move on, let me share something important with you. If you're finding this conversation interesting or helpful, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Conversations like this are about understanding human connection in a deeper way. And I'm always curious to hear from viewers about their own experiences. Now let's talk about touch number 6, which I like to call the silent pull. This one might look incredibly simple from the outside. You're sitting beside her, maybe on a couch, maybe at a movie, maybe standing side by side watching something happening around you. Without saying anything, you reach over and gently pull her closer. Your arm wraps around her shoulder, or your hand rests on her waist and closes the small space between you. No words, no dramatic gesture, just movement. This works because of something psychologists studying attachment call proximity seeking. Think about small children walking beside a parent. They instinctively reach for the parent's hand when they want reassurance. That instinct never completely disappears in adulthood. When a man gently pulls a woman closer to him, it communicates, "I want you near me." Not because of a request, not because she asked, but because her presence feels good. For many mature women, that experience carries deep emotional meaning. Because something happens over the years that many women rarely talk about openly. They become used to being the ones who create closeness. They plan the dinners. They initiate the conversations, they maintain the connection, and sometimes, over time, they begin to feel like affection must be earned. So when a man naturally closes the distance simply because he enjoys being near her, it sends a different message entirely. You belong here. You don't have to prove anything. Being beside you feels right. And that kind of reassurance can soften emotional defenses in ways that long conversations cannot. I once heard a relationship therapist describe a moment she witnessed during a counseling session. A couple had been struggling with emotional distance for years. At one point, the husband simply reached over and pulled his wife gently closer without saying a word. She leaned into him almost immediately. And the therapist said you could actually see the tension leave her shoulders. That's the power of quiet gestures. They bypass arguments and explanations. They speak directly to the emotional brain. Now we've reached the final touch on our list. The one I mentioned earlier that relationship therapists sometimes recommend to couples who feel emotionally disconnected. And the reason this one works so well has everything to do with the biology of stress, comfort, and human bonding. This final gesture is something almost everyone has experienced, but very few people allow it to last long enough for its full psychological effect to happen. It's called the long hold hug. And what happens during a true, unhurried embrace might surprise you, because if the hug lasts long enough, something remarkable begins to happen inside both people's nervous systems. And once you understand why, you may never rush through a hug again. Now we arrive at the final touch, the one that carries more emotional and psychological weight than almost anything else on this list. And interestingly enough, it is also the one people rush through the most. It's the long hold hug. Not the quick, polite hug people exchange when greeting acquaintances. Not the brief squeeze followed by 2 friendly pats on the back. Not the half-hearted, one-arm side hug that feels more like a social obligation than genuine affection. I'm talking about a real embrace. Both arms around each other, chest to chest. No rushing. No pulling away after 2 seconds because the moment feels awkward. Just staying there, breathing, holding. And here is where science enters the picture again. Researchers studying physical affection have discovered that when a hug lasts around 20 seconds or longer, something very specific begins to happen in the body. The brain releases oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone. At the same time, cortisol levels begin to decrease. Cortisol is the hormone associated with stress. It's the chemical your body releases when you feel pressure, anxiety, or emotional tension. So when oxytocin rises and cortisol drops at the same time, the nervous system shifts into a completely different state. Heart rate slows, muscles relax, breathing deepens. The body moves from a state of alertness into a state of safety. And when 2 people experience that shift together, the emotional impact can be profound. This is one of the reasons relationship therapists sometimes recommend extended hugging exercises for couples who feel disconnected from each other. Dr. John Gottman, one of the most respected relationship researchers in the world, has spent more than 4 decades studying what makes couples succeed or fail. In his work, he often talks about the importance of physical affection that lasts long enough to regulate the nervous system. Because when couples hold each other without rushing away, something deeper than words begins to happen. They calm each other, they reconnect at a biological level. Now think about what this means for a mature woman. By the time many women reach their 40s, 50s, or beyond, life has likely handed them a collection of experiences that shaped how they protect their hearts. There may have been heartbreak. There may have been disappointment. There may have been years spent holding families together, supporting others, solving problems, and carrying emotional weight that few people ever noticed. Many women become incredibly strong because they had to. They learn how to manage everything on their own. They learn how to appear composed even when they are exhausted, and sometimes the world becomes so used to their strength that people forget they also need comfort. So when a man wraps his arms around that woman and holds her, really holds her, without rushing, something inside her begins to soften, not because she is fragile, but because she finally feels safe enough to stop being strong for a moment. Imagine that feeling for a second. To rest your head against someone's shoulder and realize you don't have to carry everything right now. You don't have to solve anything. You don't have to explain anything. You're simply being held. That experience can be incredibly healing, and often it's the quiet gestures like this that rebuild emotional closeness, far more effectively than elaborate romantic plans. One woman once shared a story during a relationship workshop that perfectly captured this idea. She said she had spent years feeling emotionally distant from her partner. They still cared about each other, but something felt missing. One evening, after a long and difficult week, she came home exhausted. Without asking questions, her partner simply pulled her into a long hug and held her there. She said something surprising happened. At first, she felt uncomfortable because they weren't used to standing there like that. But after a few seconds, she felt her body relax. And then she began to cry. Not dramatic crying, just quiet tears. And afterward, she said something that stayed with everyone in the room. She said, "For the first time in years, I felt like someone was holding me instead of expecting me to hold everything together." That is the power of a genuine embrace. It reminds someone that they are not alone. Now, here is something important to understand. None of the touches we talked about today are about technique. In the way people sometimes imagine, they are not tricks. They are not strategies designed to manipulate someone into feeling something artificial. They are expressions of presence, awareness, care, and when they happen naturally between two people who respect each other, they create moments of connection that words simply cannot replicate. Let's take a moment and reflect on the 7 touches we explored together. The slow lower back guide that communicates quiet protection, the 2-handed handhold that signals complete attention, the forehead touch that creates a moment of shared vulnerability, the back of the neck touch that blends trust with desire, the subtle thumb stroke that activates the brain's intimacy circuits, the silent pull that says, "I want you closer." And finally, the long hold hug that calms the nervous system and reminds someone they are safe. None of these require wealth. None of these require perfect looks. None of these require elaborate romantic planning. What they require is something much simpler: presence, intention, and the willingness to slow down enough to truly connect with another human being. And that may actually be the rarest quality of all in today's fast-moving world. So if you found something meaningful in today's conversation, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these gestures stood out the most to you? Have you ever experienced a moment where a simple touch created a powerful emotional connection? Share your thoughts in the comments. The conversations that happen there are often just as insightful as the videos themselves. And if you enjoy thoughtful discussions about relationships, emotional intelligence, and living well in the later chapters of life, make sure to subscribe to the Mindful Senior Living channel. Because the truth is, connection doesn't become less important as we grow older. If anything, it becomes more meaningful. And sometimes, the smallest gestures are the ones that remind us just how powerful human connection can be.